The air in Ashadi market was thick with the scent of roasted plantain, diesel fumes, and human ambition. Sunlight, fractured by the haphazard canopy of corrugated iron and brightly colored umbrellas, dappled the chaotic thoroughfare. Here, amidst the clamor of hawkers chanting their prices and the continuous blare of motorbike horns, the world moved on transaction, speed, and immediate gain. This was the stage set for Jack's great social experiment, a calculated performance intended to expose the deepest layers of human integrity. Tech billionaire Jack Adewale, usually encased in the sterile comfort of his Ikoyi penthouse or cruising in his armored vehicle, stood sweating slightly in a simple linen shirt and faded jeans, blending remarkably well into the upscale crowd of middle-aged men seeking anonymity. He watched the scene unfold from a discreet distance, his eyes, usually focused on quarterly reports and global markets, now narrowed on the ground. His security detail, dressed as ordinary marketgoers, positioned themselves strategically around a meticulously chosen spot near a busy junction, the area where desperation and opportunity most frequently converged. The object of their collective focus, a worn leather satchel, lay casually beside Jack's feet. Inside, tightly banded and carefully stacked, was $100,000, a sum that represented a life-altering fortune to 99% of the people swarming within sight. Jack inhaled deeply, the pungent Lagos aroma filling his lungs, the scent of necessity. For years, his wealth had acted like an invisible shield, reflecting all genuine human connection back at him. Every woman who entered his life, every friend who sought his favor, seemed to possess a hidden ledger itemizing their benefits. He wanted to shatter that shield, to find someone whose moral compass spun true, independent of the gravity of his vast fortune. This theatrical drop was his last, desperate attempt to reclaim a semblance of real intimacy. With a motion that appeared clumsy and distracted, a quick brush against a passing porter carrying a towering stack of plastic buckets, Jack allowed the satchel to slip from his grasp. It landed with a soft, unassuming thud, partially obscured by an overturned crate. For a silent, heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. The sheer speed of the Lagosian market meant people walked with their gazes fixed forward, focused on their next step or transaction. Then a small boy selling cold sachets of water noticed the leather edge. His eyes widened instantaneously, the spark of recognition flaring bright enough to draw the attention of a nearby cart pusher. The slow trickle of curiosity quickly swelled into a flash flood of desperate activity. The cart pusher lunged first, scooping up the bag with a feral intensity. But as he fumbled with the zipper, the latch gave way, and the meticulously stacked bundles of foreign currency spilled out onto the dusty, uneven pavement like a broken dam. The reaction was immediate and seismic. The market's continuous roar briefly paused, replaced by a collective, sharp intake of breath, followed instantly by a cacophony of shouts, shoves, and scrambling feet. People dropped their wares, tomatoes tumbled, shoes scattered, and a woman's brightly patterned fabric shawl was torn in the ensuing frenzy. Jack watched, his face impassive, as human decency dissolved into primal opportunism. Hands, young, old, calloused, manicured, clawed at the pavement, snatching the money in hurried, guilty grabs. This confirmed his worst fears about humanity, etching lines of deeper disappointment onto his already guarded expression. Yet, he kept searching, his trained eye panning across the chaotic scene, looking for the anomaly, the one person who looked beyond the immediate, shimmering temptation of the cash itself. The chaos unfolded just meters away from Vivien's small stall, where she sold vibrant, expertly crafted African jewelry. She hadn't seen the initial drop, but the sudden, aggressive surge of the crowd toward a single point alerted her immediately. Her first instinct was fear. Was it a fight? Was it a thief? Then she saw the scattered, distinctive green and white paper. Dollars. A dizzying, impossible quantity. She gripped the edge of her makeshift table, the sight momentarily paralyzing her, pulling her mind away from the dull ache of her own financial despair. Her mother, Mama Titi, lay in a teaching hospital across the city, needing a complex cardiac surgery, a procedure that required a deposit far greater than Vivien could hope to earn in a decade. Vivien saw the money not as abstract paper, but as the precise measurement of her mother's breathing, the distance between life and death. Her small brother, Tund, a lanky teenager who helped her manage the stall after school, was the first to speak, his voice a tight, desperate whisper that cut through the market noise. Vivien, look, it's everywhere. We can take some. Just enough, sister, just enough for Mama Titi's surgery. Nobody will notice. Tund's eyes, usually full of youthful energy, were now wild with a terrifying mixture of hope and temptation. He took a tentative step toward the edge of the fray, his hand already outstretched, his moral compass compromised by the sheer urgency of their reality. Vivien grabbed his arm, her fingers clamping down with surprising strength. "No, stop," she hissed, pulling him back against the safety of the stall. "That money belongs to someone. It is not ours to take. That much money, Tund, someone will be looking for it. It will bring only trouble, not blessing." But even as she spoke the words of reason, a furious battle raged in her own gut. The image of the hospital billing clerk, cold and unyielding, demanding the payment, flashed behind her eyes. Is honesty worth your mother's life? The terrible question screamed inside her. She felt the weight of her family's entire future pressing down on her shoulders. Her mother's surgery was scheduled for the end of the week. The deadline felt like a closing fist. As the frenzy began to subside, the most aggressive grabbers having snatched what they could and melted away, Vivien noticed a few stray bundles that had been kicked under a vendor's cart. Unlike the opportunistic thieves who had disappeared, she moved toward the abandoned cash with a strange, methodical calm. She wasn't grabbing, she was recovering. She meticulously retrieved every single bill, brushing the dust off the edges, her motions deliberate and slow, ignoring the stunned, slightly resentful glances of the few remaining onlookers who wondered why she hadn't joined the feeding frenzy earlier. She found what was left of the satchel itself, torn and dirty. Inside the shredded leather lining, there was a faint, almost invisible corporate logo, a stylized, woven into the fabric, that she instinctively recognized as belonging to Jack Adewale's formidable conglomerate, Adewale Tech. The realization hit her with sickening force. This was no petty theft or mistake. This was a purposeful, calculated loss by a man whose wealth was boundless. The money she held now felt hotter, heavier, carrying the enormous responsibility of an impending confrontation with a corporate leviathan. She looked down at the stacked bundles, the weight of the $100,000 in her hands feeling like the entirety of her difficult life. The recovered money lay hidden beneath a large piece of wax print fabric beneath Vivien's jewelry table. The vibrant yellow and blue patterns did little to hide the enormous ethical pressure the cash exerted on her. Tund had gone home, defeated but still pleading, suggesting they just keep a small percentage for Mama Titi and mail the rest anonymously. Vivien had simply shaken her head, her jaw tight. "We are not thieves, Tund. And we don't start today." The remainder of the afternoon felt interminable, a blur of polite commerce where her true preoccupation was the enormous decision sitting inches from her feet. The money felt like a test, perhaps divine, perhaps human, but a test nonetheless. As the market slowly began to wind down, transitioning from the frantic rhythm of day trade to the slower pace of evening, Vivien knew she could not keep the money another night. She didn't want to. It felt like a disease, consuming her peace of mind. Clutching the satchel remnants and the thick stacks of cash, she walked directly to a high-end office complex she knew housed the local administrative offices of Adewale Tech. The logo burned into her memory. She bypassed the reception, demanding to speak to the manager or anyone in charge of security, her voice trembling slightly but firm. The security guards, initially amused by the sight of a humble street vendor asking for an audience with one of the building's top executives, became rigid when they caught sight of the thick bundles of currency she clutched. A few minutes later, she was ushered into a small, sterile side office, facing a stern, perfectly groomed man in a crisp suit, Jack's head of security, Mr. Nneka. Mr. Nduka listened with an expression that conveyed utter disbelief, occasionally exchanging confused glances with a junior aide. "You found this on the street? In Oshodi?" he asked, his tone dripping with skepticism, as though speaking of a sighting of a mythical beast. Vivien simply pushed the cash across the desk. It was lost. I have counted it. It is $92,650 remaining. I believe it belongs to Adewale Tech. She omitted the remaining amount was due to the market scavengers, preserving her integrity fully. Before Mr. Nduka could complete his patronizing interrogation, the door opened and Jack walked in. He was no longer in his market disguise. He was imposing in an impeccable tailored suit, radiating authority and cool detachment. He had received a discreet message from his security detail moments after Vivien entered the building, recognizing her immediately from the hours of surveillance footage he had studied that afternoon. He walked directly to the desk, his gaze fixed on Vivien. "You have something of mine, I understand?" His voice was deep, cultured, yet held a challenging edge, a final layer of scrutiny. Vivien met his gaze unflinchingly, the weight of the moment giving her a sudden, immense inner strength. "I believe so, sir. I found it in Ashadi Market. It appears to be a significant amount of money," she stated calmly, pointing to the stacks. Jack leaned over the desk, his eyes searching her face for any flicker of deceit, any hint of regret. "And why, in a city like Lagos, where necessity drives so many, did you not keep it? $92,000, that is a life-changing sum for anyone." His question was not accusatory, it was a genuine inquiry, a probe into the core of her character. Jack stared at Vivien across the mahogany desk, a slow, calculated smile finally appearing on his face. It was not a warm smile, but one of relieved validation. The surveillance footage confirmed her actions were above board, her presence here confirmed her intention. She was the needle in the cynical haystack he had tossed into the Lego street. He straightened up, his demeanor instantly shifting from interrogator to magnanimous benefactor. "Miss Vivien," he began, the name rolling off his tongue with a newfound respect, "you have demonstrated a moral fiber I frankly believed had become extinct. I commend your honesty." Vivien simply nodded, exhaustion weighing on her, her mission accomplished. "Sir, I am glad it is recovered. If that is all, I need to get back. My mother is awaiting surgery, and I must prepare for tomorrow's market." Jack raised a hand, stopping her just as she turned to leave. "Wait, you mentioned a surgery. Is the lack of funds what is delaying it?" Vivien paused, biting the inside of her cheek. She resented the exposure of her vulnerability but knew better than to lie. "The deposit is proving difficult to raise, sir. It is a matter of time." Jack turned to Mr. Nduka, who was silently observing the scene with a notepad. "Mr. Nduka, arrange a bank transfer immediately. Pay the full deposit for Mama Titi's surgery, and ensure the hospital has everything needed for the best care. Treat it as a reward for Miss Vivien's impeccable character." Vivien's eyes, which had held steady through the confrontation, now welled up with unshed tears. Relief flooded her, sharp and sudden, nearly collapsing her resolve. "Sir, I can't thank you enough. This is truly a gift." Jack, however, waved away her gratitude, his expression becoming serious once more. "This is not a gift, Vivien. This is an investment. I still have questions about the sustainability of your integrity. Anyone can be honest once. It's the constant, grinding pressure that breaks people." He leaned forward, his proposal dropping like a gauntlet. "I want to put your honesty to the ultimate test. I want you to work for me directly, for a period. I will pay you a salary that removes all financial stress. The surgery, your brother's schooling, a home, everything will be handled. In return, you must simply maintain the integrity you have shown today, navigating a series of ethical dilemmas I will place before you." Vivien was stunned, the reality of the offer clashing violently with her simple life. She felt an immediate wariness. It felt less like an offer of employment and more like a bizarre, prolonged examination. "A test, sir? For what?" "I returned your money. Isn't that enough?" she asked, her voice regaining its strength. Jack's eyes hardened slightly. "No, it's not. I am seeking a partner, in life and in business, whom money cannot corrupt. You are the first person who has ever passed the initial screening. Now, you must pass the entire course. If you accept this offer, you will be entering a world where the temptation is not $100,000 in cash, but millions in influence and power. It's a different, much more insidious kind of hunger. If you fail, you go back to your stall, debt-free, but knowing you succumbed to temptation. If you succeed, everything changes. Do you accept the challenge? The weight of the world had lifted, only to be replaced by the weight of Jack's intense scrutiny. Vivien accepted. The alternative, watching her mother suffer while she stubbornly clung to her pride, was impossible. Within 2 days, her life was unrecognizable. Mama Titi was in the best ward, the necessary procedures underway. Vivien, now known as Jack's new, special projects assistant, occupied a plush, soundproof office on the 20th floor of the Adewale tech headquarters. She was given an impressive corporate laptop, a generous expense account, and a set of deliberately vague, high-stakes tasks designed to be subtly riddled with traps. Her first assignment, reconciling the invoices for a multi-million-dollar construction contract in Abuja. Jack made it clear from the start that his expectations were impossibly high. Your job, he told her during their only face-to-face briefing, is to ensure every single naira, every single dollar is accounted for. This company is built on precision. Find the discrepancies. Find the padding. I want a complete audit, and I want it yesterday. He didn't mention the hidden Easter eggs his internal audit team had deliberately planted. A fictional subcontractor named Kalechi Enterprises, a slightly inflated material cost for a specific alloy, and a forged travel receipt worth only a few $100s, a pittance in the grand scheme, but an easy piece of evidence to overlook. Vivien, despite her lack of formal accounting training, possessed a street-honed meticulousness and an inherent distrust of anything that looked too easy. She knew the value of a single dollar earned through grueling market labor, and that understanding fueled her forensic examination of the spreadsheets. She spent hours tracing the flow of funds, calling vendors, and cross-referencing industry standard pricing. The luxurious office felt like a glass cage. She was surrounded by opulence, yet completely isolated, keenly aware that every employee around her, from the executive secretary to the janitor, was likely a subject or an agent of Jack's ongoing test. Late one evening, she finally isolated the 3 anomalies. The forged travel receipt was simple, almost trivial, but the Kalechi Enterprises shell company was complex, designed to look like a legitimate profit-sharing arrangement. She printed the evidence, her heart pounding with a mixture of terror and triumph. This is what he wanted, she thought, the realization striking her. The actual theft was irrelevant. The finding of the theft was the test. The smallest detail, the inflated price of the alloy, was the most satisfying catch. It was a fraction of a percent, easily missed, yet she had noticed the variance because her mind had been calibrated by years of bartering and calculating tiny margins. She walked into Jack's office the next morning, not with fear, but with the quiet confidence of a student who had mastered the lesson. Jack reviewed the audit report Vivien presented, his eyes sharp and unreadable. He tapped the page detailing the Kalechi Enterprises shell company, a complex fraud designed to fleece the company of close to $1 million. Impressive, Vivien, he stated, his voice flat. Most people would miss the alloy inflation, let alone the subcontractor shell. They are blinded by the large numbers and look for the obvious. You saw the quiet dishonesty. He confirmed the success of the first major test, but his praise felt clinical, detached, like grading an assignment. However, the relentless testing began to yield an unexpected result: connection. Despite his efforts to keep their interactions purely professional, the intensity of their daily collaboration forced them into closer proximity. They started having working dinners, initially discussing discrepancies and market analysis, but the conversation inevitably drifted. One evening, discussing the difficulty of trusting internal teams, Vivien found herself opening up about the reality of life in her former neighborhood. It's not just about money, Jack, she explained, using his first name naturally for the first time. It's about dignity. When you have nothing, the theft of even a small amount from your table feels monumental. Here, with billions, $1 million is a rounding error. That scale changes the morality, doesn't it? Jack was captivated, not by her insight, but by the genuine emotion behind it. He rarely spoke of his own past, but in response to her honesty, he revealed the source of his current cynicism: a former business partner who had betrayed him spectacularly, costing him his first major venture and his faith in human motives. "I built this empire on the ashes of that betrayal," he admitted, swirling the wine in his glass. "I believe trust is a luxury only the naive can afford. You, Vivien, you're trying to prove me wrong, and honestly, it's frustrating." This candid exchange cracked the foundation of their professional dynamic. Vivien realized Jack wasn't just a cold, calculating mogul. He was deeply wounded, using his wealth as a barricade against future pain. Jack, in turn, began to see Vivien not just as a successful experiment, but as a person whose moral clarity was not a performance but an intrinsic part of her soul. He started seeking her company outside of the office, suggesting a tour of the National Museum or a quiet drive along the coastline. These moments, free from spreadsheets and hidden agendas, became their true meeting ground, where the lines of employer and test subject began to blur into something dangerously close to genuine affection. Yet, the ghost of the money dropped in Ashadi, and the unspoken threat of the ongoing test remained a heavy, silent presence in the room. Jack decided it was time to introduce Vivien to his world. It was a calculated move, not just a social outing, but another dimension of the test. He took her as his guest to a high-profile charity gala hosted by the creme de la creme of Lagos's financial elite. Vivien, dressed in a stunning custom-made gown that felt like armor, felt the vast chasm between her past and present life more acutely than ever. The room was a shimmering spectacle of diamonds, haute couture, and hollow laughter. As they circulated, the contrast was jarring. Jack was in his element, exchanging pleasantries and complex business metaphors with CEOs and ministers. Vivien, observing the extravagance, noted the effortless waste, the half-empty champagne flutes, the casual dismissal of staff, the performative generosity of the charity auction. "They are selling a Picasso for children's literacy," she whispered to Jack, a hint of steel in her voice. Meanwhile, the market women whose stalls feed the city cannot afford a basic education for their own children. Jack listened, amused and intrigued. "That's how this world works, Vivien. It's a game of appearances. People donate what they don't miss to feel better about hoarding what they need." He introduced her to two associates, Mr. and Mrs. Kalu, a couple known for their cutthroat business practices and social climbing. The Kalus, eyeing Vivien's simple elegance and lack of familiar pedigree, made veiled, condescending inquiries about her background. Mrs. Kalu, with a saccharine smile, asked, "Vivien, darling, Jack tells us you're involved in special projects. How is the social outreach in the markets going? Such vital work, isn't it?" Vivien, sensing the jab, refused to be cowed. She held Mrs. Kalu's gaze and replied calmly, "The social outreach is excellent, thank you. I learned more about true enterprise and integrity selling jewelry in Ashadi than I have in a week of meetings here. I understand the value of every single coin, a perspective I believe is rare in this room." Her reply, sharp and direct, silenced the couple and earned a rare, genuine spark of admiration from Jack. He watched her handle the societal pressure with the same uncompromising honesty she had used to find the flaws in his company's accounting. She didn't try to fit in, she simply was. The weight of their different worlds was still present, heavy and tangible, but Vivien's character was proving it could bear the load without cracking. The test, Jack knew, had to escalate beyond corporate auditing and social pressure. It needed to strike at the deepest, most personal level of Vivien's newfound security. He needed to create a scenario where the only ethical choice was ruinous to herself, but the dishonest choice offered permanent, untraceable salvation. He arranged for the final, devastating dilemma to unfold in his absence, removing his personal influence from the outcome. He flew to New York for a fabricated emergency meeting, leaving Vivien ostensibly in charge of a minor subsidiary company's payroll, a task deliberately chosen for its simplicity and access. While he was gone, a carefully executed crisis unfolded. Mr. Nneka, his head of security and co-conspirator in the test, informed Vivien with a look of feigned panic that the remaining funds in Mama Titi's hospital account had been frozen due to an unexpected regulatory issue, with the initial transfer placing the recovery phase of the surgery in immediate jeopardy. Simultaneously, a distressed tund called Vivien, revealing that their landlord, aware of the mother's illness, was demanding 6 months advance rent or threatening an immediate eviction, plunging the family back into homelessness. The pressure was excruciating. In a state of near despair, Vivien sat in her office, the cold truth staring at her. She was wealthy in title, but powerless to save her family from this coordinated catastrophe. Then, the temptation presented itself, planted by Jack's team, a glitch in the subsidiary's payroll system that made an immediate, untraceable transfer of exactly the required sum, rent and hospital funds, from a defunct corporate account into her personal account feasible with a single keystroke. The system flagged it as an internal correction, easily concealed by a minor paperwork adjustment that Mr. Nneka assured her he would handle if she chose that route. "It's a one-time window, Vivien," Nneka urged her over the phone, his voice tense. "The system will correct itself by morning. Nobody will ever know, and your mother and brother will be safe. Jack is thousands of miles away. It is your only option right now." Vivien looked at the computer screen, the command prompt blinking mockingly at her, offering financial freedom and familial security in exchange for her soul. She could see her mother's weak smile, hear Tun's worried voice. The money was a phantom, easily taken, easily covered up, but the act was fundamental. She wrestled with the decision for hours, her hands hovering over the keyboard, sweat slicking her brow. Finally, with a weary sigh that carried the weight of her entire life's commitment to integrity, she closed the laptop without making the transfer. She had chosen ruin over corruption. She immediately called the hospital administrator, desperately pleading for an extension, using every ounce of diplomatic skill she had developed, choosing to fight the crisis openly rather than steal her way out of it secretly. Jack returned the following day. His eyes, though weary from the long flight, held a familiar, intense expectation. He walked straight into Vivien's office, bypassing Mr. Nneka, who gave him a brief, knowing nod. The test was over. Vivien, pale and exhausted from her sleepless night battling the false crisis, looked up, her spirit battered but unbroken. She simply told him, "The subsidiary payroll is finalized. I have attached a memo regarding the rent and the hospital account. There appears to be a major regulatory error freezing Mama Titi's funds and Tun's school fees. I asked the hospital for a 1-week extension and I am exploring legal options." She mentioned nothing of the payroll glitch and the temptation she had overcome. Jack leaned against her desk, a storm brewing behind his eyes. He had been watching the security feed, witnessing her agony and her final, agonizing decision to choose honesty. He had won his bet, found his partner, and yet, the moment felt utterly hollow. He couldn't maintain the facade any longer. "Vivien," he began, his voice surprisingly rough, "Stop. Stop looking for solutions. There is no regulatory error. There is no pending eviction. It was a test. The freeze, the landlord, the glitch in the payroll system, it was all a setup. It was a lie." The silence that followed was immense, heavy enough to crush the glass walls of the office. Vivien felt a sickening lurch, the air suddenly snatched from her lungs. She stared at him, unable to process the cruelty of his confession. "A lie," she repeated, the word a ragged whisper. "You mean, my mother, my brother, their safety was just part of your experiment? You orchestrated a financial crisis for my family, after knowing my struggle, just to see if I would steal money you don't even need." Her voice began to rise, the years of repressed market frustration finally breaking through the elegant veneer of her new life. Jack attempted to reach for her, but she recoiled sharply. "I needed to know, Vivien. I needed to know that even when your back was against the wall, when the consequences were real, your integrity would hold. I lost everything once because I trusted too easily. You passed, Vivien. You passed the ultimate test. You are everything I have been looking for. You are untainted, you are true. I wanted to find true love, a true partner." His confession poured out in a rush, a desperate attempt to justify the means by the magnitude of the end. Vivien stood up, her face etched with profound betrayal. "You didn't find a partner, Jack," she stated, her voice trembling with fury and hurt. "You found a subject. You turn my life into a game, manipulating my deepest fears. True love doesn't require manipulation. Trust is earned by sharing vulnerability, not by building a test. And I cannot trust a man who has shown he is willing to break my spirit to fix his own. Vivien walked out of Adewale Tech that day, leaving the plush office and the immense salary behind. Jack made no attempt to stop her, the look of devastation on his face finally genuine. He had won the integrity test but lost the woman. He realized, with crushing clarity, that his own cynicism, his need to control and test every variable, had been the final, fatal trap. His money had, once again, acted as a corrupting force, not on Vivien, but on his own capacity for genuine connection. For 2 weeks, Jack respected her distance, allowing Vivien the space to heal. He didn't call, but he acted. He quietly ensured the hospital account was stabilized with a permanent, fully funded endowment under her mother's name and purchased a small, well-maintained apartment in a quiet, respectable neighborhood, legally transferring the title to Vivien's name. He did this not as a reward, but as a silent apology and a necessary act of restitution for the emotional torment he had inflicted. He finally understood that her character was not for sale, and her freedom was the only thing he could not purchase. Finally, he visited her small, new apartment. Vivien opened the door, her expression guarded but calm. She was not bitter, merely exhausted. "Why are you here, Jack?" she asked, her voice low. "The money is sorted. The tests are over. You have your answer." Jack stood in the doorway, his immense wealth and power feeling insignificant in the face of her quiet dignity. "I'm here to apologize, Vivien. Not for the money was just noise. I apologize for using my fear as a weapon against your goodness. I apologize for making your integrity transactional. The truth is, I failed the test, not you. I failed to trust." He took a deep breath. "I don't expect your forgiveness today or tomorrow, but I need you to know that the tests are done. No more lies, no more schemes. I don't want a partner I found through a calculated filter. I want Vivien, the woman who chose ruin over theft, the woman who challenges me to be better. I will spend whatever time it takes, earning back the trust one shattered. No grand gestures, no corporate gifts, just honesty." His vulnerability was startling, genuine, and untainted by the shadow of his wealth for the first time. Vivien looked at him, seeing past the billionaire facade to the flawed, wounded man beneath. The dance between their worlds was still complex, but now, the rhythm was dictated by her terms. One step forward at a time, guided by mutual respect. She finally stepped aside, opening the door slightly wider. "Sit down, Jack," she conceded, a hint of weariness in her voice. "We have a lot to talk about." The shocking truth of the test had ripped them apart, but the sincere beginning of honesty was the only thing that could, perhaps, begin to bridge the enormous divide. Please, kindly hit the subscribe button, like this video and share. This means a lot to us. Thank you for watching.